Thank you very much, Dieter. Fantastic information and speech, so we're very motivated to contribute even more. I would like now to proceed to our policy session. Since we were here last time, we saw a lot of development on the market, in particular in the broader context. We had EU elections, we have geopolitical shifts, we had US elections as well, causing a big shift in dynamics as well. For the EU, the key words we see a lot happening right now, we're hearing a lot, is decarbonization, resilience, and competitiveness. So really, this is all coming in very timely as well to address the momentum. We have also, to achieve these objectives, we heard just from the on the Clean Industrial Deal, the Affordable Energy Act, so what's presented yesterday as well. And we will discuss this shortly now with our panelists as well. So I would like to welcome our speakers to the stage. We're going to have a panel format right now. So the first person I'll call is Mechthild Wörsdörfer. She's Deputy Director General from DG Energy with the European Commission. Welcome. We have Krzysztof Bolesta. He's a Secretary of State in Poland, but also part of the Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union. He's going to be joining us online. We have Laura Piovesan. She's Director General and Head of the Projects Director from the European Investment Bank. We have Maria de Melo. She's a Principal at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And we have also Craig Douglas. He's a founding partner at the World Fund. So I am hoping, okay, we are all seated. I'm going to just take my seat as well. Change microphones, yes. And we do have some microphones here on the stage for our discussion. And I would like to start, first of all, welcome all of you, and thank you for taking the time for this very important discussion, very timely as well. And I would like to start with Mechthild have a specific question for you related to what we just heard from the Director General about the newly published Clean Industrial Deal. It was just yesterday, so I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions. Hope everybody had time to read it. But anyway, we're going to hear from you what's happening, what is available through that. So can you tell more about what it means for clean energy investments, for this audience, but for the broader market in the years to come? Thank you.
So, thank you very much, and I think it's very timely because this Clean Industrial Deal was published yesterday together with the Action Plan on Affordable Energy, and you have to see it together, at least from speaking about energy investments. So I think the good news is, I hope, on the Clean Industrial Deal is not only the focus on competitiveness and on industrialization and industrial development, but linked to decarbonization. So it's not a U-turn. It's really the continuation of what we have discussed last year, 2 years ago, where we need investments in all clean energy solutions. And that is necessary, and the Clean Industrial Deal gives a number of key factors to make that happen, be it on the lead markets, being on affordable energy, being on many other framework conditions to be in. And it also makes clear, in order to continue that decarbonization and industrialization, we need a lot of investments, private and public money. Dieter already mentioned the need for nearly 600 billion investments in energy year by year until 2030. Draghi report had similar figures, so it's not on the number as such, but it's huge what we need to do. And we all need, what we need know is that we need supply, demand, and the right infrastructure. So there's also a lot of focus on grids, and I know that some of the more technical discussion this afternoon will be on the need for electricity grids in particular to really make it happen in Europe. And I will also quote one example on the demand side. We, I think, have a successful example of the Hydrogen Bank. We had 2 calls, and the third one is coming this autumn. So it's all about create the demand for a new market. And the Hydrogen Bank, I think we have a bit of money. It's not huge, but it makes that link happen. And what we announced in the Clean Industrial Deal, which was requested by a few of our member states, so we had studied it, what we call a decarbonization bank. Some call it electrification bank, but I think the idea electrification is part of it, of course, also to create the demand, help those industry sectors who need to electrify, who need to decarbonize, to get exactly this pull. And we will put in a pilot project 1 billion. We speak about 100 billion in the future. So I think this is another concrete step to pull it in the market where needed. So the Green Industrial Deal, and then there are some sectors in particular, steel is one of them, automotive and others, where energy and the energy prices and the energy cost are particularly high, and the need for decarbonization is also there, but it's not happening like we want. And predictability, regulatory framework is all part of it, simplification of some of our rules, which is also part of it. I will say one word on the Affordable Energy Action Plan. As I said, high energy prices are part of the lack of competitiveness, so we hear that. And the Affordable Energy Action Plan puts something short-term. I would personally not call it revolutionary. It's a lot of 60% of the action is implementing on what we have in the regulatory framework, PPAs, CFDs, reducing the cost, make it happen. Permitting is another big work strands here, but make it happen. And we want really with those 8 actions to look at everything related to electricity, but also gas. There is a lot of speculation, maybe not always transparent ways in the gas market. So we launch an action here together with colleagues in DG FISMA and competition, and also a genuine energy union where we think we can see more coordination, better coordination between governments, but also TSOs. I know TSOs are present here today, can help reduce cost. And the sum of all those actions, hopefully implemented this year, so it's really short term and some might take next year, will save us in less fossil fuel imports up to 45 billion. That's what by 2030. That's the rough calculation. If we implement all the 8 actions and sub-actions out of the action plan, we really can save money. And I think this, with a focus on renewables and clean energy, energy efficiency as well, flexibility, storage, all what we know is in there, but make it happen together with the stakeholders, with the member states, with the investors, and so on. I think that is a bit in a nutshell, and later on we can discuss if there are questions around it.
Yes, thank you so much, Mechthild. I'm sure there will be some follow-up questions as well. But let's continue then on here, and we may come back when we have our Q&A. Okay. I would like now to say hi to Krzysztof. Hello, Krzysztof. I hope you can hear us. We see you perfectly on the screen. Good morning.
And I hope you can hear me as well.
Yes, perfectly. We have you, and I don't know if you can see the room, but anyway, we're all here, very interested in hearing you as well. So welcome. I'd like to ask you a question about the Polish presidency program, as it outlines its approach to energy transition, focusing particularly on support access to public and private funding for new energy technologies. So really looking at the innovation side as well, and the synergy, obviously, with the Clean Industrial Deal. So please, could you tell us a bit more about the main actions and measures that the Council is working on for the coming months, for the period of the presidency as well?
Thanks a lot, and thanks for having me online. I couldn't join you in person, and I regret this because it's always nice to be back in Brussels. In terms of where we are, I'm really glad that now we have something on the table that we can work with as the Council. The first 2 months of the presidency were busy for me reading all the leaks of all these documents. So now I have the concrete drafts that we can discuss and we can put on the table of the ministers in the Energy Council in March. I'm also really glad that the energy union idea is back on the table. Just for you to remember, this was the idea designed in Warsaw and manufactured in Brussels. So I'm really happy that it's back on the agenda, and we'll work towards finalizing it, making it work. In terms of our priorities for Energy Council, there are 3 priorities. It's energy security, competitiveness, and Ukraine. So all these priorities are actually fitting very well with all these documents proposed now by the Commission. I think it's fair to say that everyone is focusing on 2050 as climate neutrality objective for us, and investments needs are massive getting there, and we might differ across Europe on the road to get to climate neutrality, but we all agreed on the target. And I think the one thing that we will now try to focus is the grids. This is the bloodstream of the transition, and as far as business models and return on capital in energy generation and other elements of the value chain is concerned, are practically well discovered. But if you want to increase investment in the grid, if you want to involve private sector, private money, because this is what we need to do. So if you want to expand to private sector and then to have return on capital and lower energy bills, this is a borderline Hogwarts idea. We don't have magic on our table, but we need to really work with TSOs, with DSOs, but also with financial sector first and foremost, to actually have an idea and a system where we can increase ramp-up investment, but also decrease costs for end consumer, because this is the objective. If we tell the people, listen, this is the transformation, but the energy cost will grow, this is something that they will not agree to. So I think this is the key, how to ramp up investment, but also keep the energy bills in check. And so our idea now in the council is to take these documents that emerged from the Commission, put them on the table in March in the council. Clean industrial deal, it's something for the Compact Council first, but for us in the Energy Council, the action plan on affordable energy, and there are many good ideas in that plan, and we are happy that we can take this forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Krzysztof. So it resonates in relation to what we heard earlier as well. Thank you for your comments. I think I'm going to move to the next question that I have for the panelists. I would like to invite now Laura from the EIB, Head of Project Director, to talk about a little bit from the EIB perspective, with the launch of the Clean Industrial Deal and the Affordable Energy Action Plan. How can we ensure sufficient investment to drive innovation, competitiveness, sustainability as well, because this is more critical than ever, obviously. So the EIB will be involved in the deployment of several instruments to sustain these investments. Could you tell us a bit more about these instruments, and how do you plan to engage with the market to ensure the buy-in for the instruments, but also for successful implementation? Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Daniela, and thank you for inviting us. We were saying just before we started the panel that by having us here the day after the Clean Industrial Deal is published, we all had to read it overnight and get ready to indeed discuss about it. And it is a very important step. It's very important step for EU competitiveness, because it does clearly recognize that in decarbonization and accelerating decarbonization of our industry is the key towards competitiveness. And it also identifies two key elements that we need to address. First of all, the energy, and in particular the electricity price, and secondly, the need to de-risk the investment through a number of actions and tools. So let me tell you how European Investment Bank indeed can support the actions needed to address these 2 points. Starting from energy and electricity. It was mentioned decarbonization and electrification is not happening fast enough. We have reached last year almost a third of electricity produced in Europe from renewable energy, but still we rely in order to do that on the existing infrastructure, on the existing grids, on the existing production capacity. So clearly investment is needed, and we heard the scale of the needs, and it's needed in renewable energy, it's needed in grids, as Krzysztof mentioned, this is a key element in the puzzle, and it's also needed in development and deployment of new technologies. These investments will ensure the 2030, 2040, 2050 goals, but will also allow our industry to be competitive, and we need it to be competitive today. So for EIB, energy sector is a key, our main sector of activities. So in 2024, we reached a record level of more than 31 billion of lending as EIB Group towards energy, and our investments have been supporting energy efficiency, renewable energies, and the grids. On the grids, so TSOs and DSOs, we have also reached a record level of lending of 8 billion, which in turn mobilized 40 billion of investments, meaning addressing a very large share of investment needs in Europe. Going forward, we will continue to support these large investment needs, both with the volumes, but also with targeted actions. Already in our investments, we do prioritize productivity growth, we prioritize sustainability, we prioritize innovation. But through the instruments that we are putting forward in the Clean Industrial Deal, together with the European Commission, we are really aiming to pilot and then potentially scale up more tailored instruments that address some critical elements identified. And we have been talking about the electricity prices, and we have been talking about de-risking investments. So on the electricity prices, how can we contribute in addition of what we plan to continue to do, so to scale up large investment volumes with long-term tenors? We are also looking at these tailored tools mentioned in the Clean Industrial Deals. First is piloting and scaling up guarantee instruments for PPA, so power purchase agreement, focusing not on the largest off-taker, which already have been able to deploy these instruments well, but to counter-guarantee the smaller ones, so that we allow these instruments to be deployed across the economic landscape. Second key instrument is for grids, again, and to address the bottlenecks on the manufacturing of grid components. We do see that when we are investing in large-scale interconnectors, for example, the bottleneck is the manufacturing capacity of the cables. So by supporting EU industry in addressing these bottlenecks through guarantees for the grids manufacturing components, we hope to be able to indeed accelerate the investments on the electricity grids that are a key element for the electricity price. So the second investment barrier that has been identified by the Clean Industrial Deal is around de-risking investments. And a number of policy and actions are put forward. You spoke about the public procurement, you spoke about simplification, and very interesting, working on the model of the hydrogen bank to provide the incentives to the risk. On our side, we're also intervening with the risking instruments to support the clean tech and scaling up this as well. So a very complete package, but I think indeed there is this need to support and accelerate investments for the decarbonization, but support both lowering electricity price and scaling up new technologies.
Thank you very much, Laura. Yes, and EIB, we know, is a key actor for us to mobilize all the 600 billion rights that's needed as well. So thank you for specifying more. I know Krzysztof, he will have to leave early at some point. So Krzysztof, I'm just announcing this to the audience, so just so we know. But I'm going to continue with our panelists. Now I'd like to ask a question to Maria de Melo. She's a principal at the EBRD. And we would like to understand a little bit about the EBRD perspective as well, because you do have a long track record in energy, in fostering international cooperation as well, in clean energy projects. And we would like to, from your perspective, what measures you see as essential for the EU and the neighboring countries to establish this enabling framework for attracting investments, private investments, crowding investments in renewable, in enhancing competitiveness, and also economic growth. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I share exactly the views that were said before. It's actually an honor to be here just the day after the Clean Industrial Deal has been published. I also was trying to read it overnight to get up to speed, and looking at all the chapters is going to be a very interesting next few months ahead of us, where we will be able to really engage with what is in this new deal and really rethink the way in which we are approaching some of the policies and some of the support we provide at EBRD to many countries. So at EBRD, all of our projects that we do, so in 2024, we did about 16.6 billion in investments and across the EU, but also the neighboring countries and Central Asia, where we operate. And all of these projects have to be Paris aligned already. So that's how we position ourselves. 58% of these investments have been green. So our commitment and our ambition from that perspective is aligned with that of the EU. We also were able to mobilize the private sector, which is at the very core of what we do. We had about 27 billion, if the numbers are not wrong, of private mobilization just in 2024. And, that's what we try to do. We try to come along to invest in the projects that have the right policy angle, that are done together with the countries, that are done with the private sector, sometimes with our partners like EIB, for example, with KfW, with the IFC, with AFD, depending on the region we are operating in. But we do try to come and do this together. So how do we do this? What role do we play, on top of being an investor, to the policy framework in the EU and outside the EU? So I will touch a bit more on the renewable energy generation side, because that's something that I think it's really important that we continue to scale up and we don't lose sight of the need to actually continue to develop clean energy, because decarbonization needs to come. Part of that decarbonization is through electrification, and we do need the renewable energy to back that up. Even for hydrogen, we will need renewable energy in order to make the green hydrogen. So in terms of what do we see as being the policy framework that enables the private sector? So let me maybe put this into 4 parts. I think that we need a policy framework that comes together with auctions, comes together with private sector-led or private sector developed markets, for example, for the corporate PPAs, because that's another area. So in a way, we need to be able to scale up renewable energy through both government-backed support schemes, through competitive processes like auctions, but also allow this corporate PPA market to really develop and take off in Europe. The potential is there. I mean, if you look at Spain, skyrocketing. If you look at Romania in the last year, also going up a lot. Croatia is another example. So it is really coming. And then with the CBAM, we saw all of the countries we work in the neighborhood region coming to us and saying, how do we align? How can we do also the corporate PPA so that we can be, better positioned when CBAM comes? And so this just shows you the importance and the leadership the EU takes in these measures. And so in order to support those countries, and we're talking about the Western Balkans, we're talking about also North Africa, Egypt, Tunisia. These are countries where the market starts booming and starts coming to us. How do we integrate? How do we do markets? And it's challenging for these countries because some of them don't have electricity markets, even nationally, let alone at the scale in order to be able to do these things. So they do need that policy hub. So what do we mean by the policy support? We want to see political commitment, and this needs to come from the governments. The governments need to be committed to the green transition, to decarbonizing, to electrifying. We need to see a bit long-term targets, and this is, again, where the EU and the EU member states have plans, have the RRPs, you have the RFs, you have a clear plan that tells the developers as well in the private sector, oh, I am committed to doing this, and in fact, not a few megawatts, I'm committing to gigawatts by this date. This is important, especially for the neighboring region, because in the neighboring region, to get a developer to go there and find and invest in bidding in an auction process, in negotiating with an industrial or corporate PPA, they need to know that they are not there for 10 megawatts or 15 megawatts, because the costs of entry are high. They need to know there is a plan, a long-term plan that makes sense to invest resources there, that these countries want to be, part of the energy community of the EU. This is important. Then it's important to have clear contractual frameworks. And here, what are we talking about? We are talking about who's going to be the institution that is going to be the off-taker or the support counterparty in the case of a CFD. What are the arrangements there? How do we get paid? Is it a levy? Is it, are we taking funding from another source? Has this scheme been state aid approved, for example? Does it follow a sound backing for it? What are the permitting requirements? Here, transparency is very important, making sure that each institution knows within the country, the transmission company, the distribution company, that they know exactly what they have to do, that the private sector knows, okay, I'm going to go to this country and I need this document, then I'll need that permit, then I'll need that license. And they know that it's not going to be revoked, it's not going to be changed. So that's very important because a lot of or most of the development risk in a renewable energy project will always lie with the developer. So it's a huge undertaking that the private sector is being asked to do. So they need those processes to be really transparent and sound. Now, what happens if I get curtailed by the transmission company? Do I get compensated? Do I not get compensated? What happens with balancing, which is a requirement in even some of the neighboring countries nowadays, especially those in the energy community. In the EU, of course, it's a requirement. So what happens with all of that? And then, lastly, but not less important, we need the robust legal framework to back it up. We need to know that it's not going to be revoked tomorrow. We are not going to change the laws tomorrow, right? So we need the laws to really be there to provide that sounding board. And then with this, if you can run clear auction process to get the private sector to bid and to lower costs by bidding, then that's exactly what we need to do. We will foster competition. The more people want to bid, the lower the prices will go, the more you'll develop the market. And this is true for solar, for wind, even for batteries. We need to see more of those auctions coming so that people really invest in batteries. They really invest in the hydrogen, so we can finally see some shift. So what happened with wind and solar many years ago, 10 years ago? So these, to me, are the key points that need to really come together when we talk about the policy frameworks and what we need to do. And I'm just going to give a quick example of Romania, because Romania, we have been supporting the government, the ministry, with their CFD scheme that they've auctioned in November, December. And you will see the results are incredible. They were able to auction 1.5 gigawatts as planned. That is leveraging over 2 gigawatts of projects directly. And they were able to get prices in the 50s, in the 60s for wind and solar. This is transformative. I remember when the state aid clearance was obtained from the EU, we were debating, just 18 months before, whether 190 was a good price. I mean, 50, 60. Clearly, the private sector can deliver. Now, what does the private sector need to deliver? They need this policy framework. They need the CFD contracts to be there. They need the arrangements to be clear. They need to know the countries are in for the long term. And Romania is, because Romania actually announced in their RRF and the RRP a milestone that they were going to award 1.5 gigawatts of CFDs, and they delivered. This is important. It's very important to have these things. And on this topic, to wrap up, I'm probably going over time. The CFD in Romania also has another particularity that maybe is something to think about for other countries, which is it's financed by the Modernization Fund, which the EIB actually has the committee. So you're using the Modernization Fund, but instead of doing a CapEx grant, you're using it to finance a support scheme. A support scheme that it's a give and take, depends on the market price. It could be that the developers will be paying the government for the next few years. So it could be that, don't even need to draw on those funds. This is really transformative. It's a different way of thinking about things. It's a way of really leveraging funding further and further than what we are used to. And this, to me, is the type of thing we need to start thinking about more creatively. De-risking, yes, of course. And how can we leverage even more the funds that we have? How can we leverage more grant funding? How can we have guarantee facilities like we do with InvestEU, with the FSD, to lend even more? How can we partner more with the private sector? How can we make the private sector come in? Because the money is there. We just need to be able to channel it to what we think is the right way for a decarbonized Europe, for a clean Europe, and for our net zero targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. And very interesting policy recommendations. And I'm pretty sure a lot of what you said here resonates strongly with the audience, because we discussed all of these points a lot in the working groups. So we're fully aligned, I believe, with our private investors as well. Talking of which, I'm going to invite now Craig to talk to us a little bit, because Craig is a very active member of our working groups as well, and he's a partner in the World Fund. And so, Craig, well, let's see what resonates to you as private sector, as well as a fund as well, and given your experience in investing clean tech in Europe, what is your reaction to the new announcements, the new measures, and also what would be the critical elements that you see that need to be in place for the initiatives to ensure success, to be effective, to have an impact for private sector? Yeah.
Sure, thanks very much. It's an interesting point here in terms of this is the leaked documents actually give a lot of impact in terms of what was going to be focused on, but the actual figures put into the documents that were only published yesterday, slightly less enthusiastic. Like it's pilot schemes and then scaling up, and we'll see how it goes. Just to put it in context, it was mentioned by a few different people this morning where we are today versus where we need to get to. The figure of 600 million, I think it's probably closer to $1 trillion in terms of annually what we need to be doing by 2030 to actually meet the climate goals, and also to meet our cost down goals as well with regards to renewable energy. So I really like a lot of the points in the policies, the frameworks that are being put in place, particularly the guarantees. I think that's an excellent way of leveraging public capital, because a lot of the time those guarantees will not be called. Right? So you can leverage yourself far further in getting public money and private money to work together. So that side of things I think is really, really important in terms of the actual mechanisms. It's probably the single best thing I think that can be done. And whether that's guarantees for counterparty risks and CFDs and PPAs, or whether that's guarantees of offtake or guarantees of volume for scaling up capacity. Because a lot of the things that we have an issue with at the moment is actually delivering on the capacity that we need to install. If you want to buy a transformer at the moment, I think for the grid, yeah, good luck. I'll deliver it to you in 2030, right? If you haven't already ordered it today. So there's a few issues, shall we say, in terms of scaling up, but I think the guarantee scheme side of things is one of the biggest. In terms of leveraging in private capital, we are a long way off from where we need to be in terms of the amount of capital that needs to come in from the private sector. The public sector is doing a great job in terms of putting more capital. I would love to see more. I'd always love to see more. But in terms of the amount that needs to come in from the private sector is significantly more than it is today. It has increased. It is nicely increasing. But what does the private sector really need to see to be able to put in more capital? Mentioned before in the plenary, in the keynote speech and by EIB, certainty, right? Certainty, consistency, and speed. Right? Those are the three things that you need. By certainty, I mean, like, what is the minimum return likelihood from this project? First, like, is it even bother getting out of bed to bid on it? Right? So you know, certainty of what my minimum return profile is going to be. Guarantees, CFD is great for doing that. Secondly, in terms of, you know, consistency, once I've done it on this project, can I do it on another 20, please, or another 200? Because a lot of the big players, I mean, like the big pension funds and things, won't get out of bed for less than 100 million, really, ideally a bit more than that. So if you're going to do a new renewable energy project, or you're doing a grid upgrade, or whatever it is, and your initial project, or your things in the tens of millions, or even in the hundreds of millions, you better be damn sure that there's going to be an opportunity to make it a lot bigger. Because, you know, the big players, if you want to get a lot of capital in, you need to be able to replicate that. And I don't mean just replicate that in a region, I mean replicate that across the continent. Right? So the harmonization pieces that are in the documentation is fundamentally important, I think, in terms of harmonizing across borders as much as possible, and the pushing people to implement what's already been agreed. You know, in areas where, you know, the 10 countries where the CFDs and PPA and the grid architecture frameworks have been implemented have seen huge growth. They do that everywhere, please. And creating more harmonization with regards to things like grid fees and transfers between is going to be important. I was speaking to someone earlier today. There's a nice summary document of grid fees in Europe. It's 700 pages long, right? A summary document, right? It's nuts. And increasingly, what I think mentioned before, the grid actually is going to be the biggest cost. And I think we're, mentioned by Krzysztof, we're kind of fooling ourselves that we can think we can get all three things at the same time. So kind of the last point for me is there has to be a bit of realism here in terms of things are going to be more expensive. And particularly, the balance of costs is going to change. Renewables have basically a zero marginal cost of production. The grid needs to be much, much bigger to be able to deliver on that, and the flexibility stuff in there is all very good. So, like, consistency, you know, fundamentally important. What's my minimum return, and can I really scale that up across? If you get those three things together, then, you know, I think there's a huge opportunity to get lots more private capital, ideally leveraged by the public and backstopped by the public capital, which allows public capital to go far further.
Thank you very much, Craig. And the main remaining question that comes up, and how do we have more private capital coming in, right? So a lot of recommendations, a lot of areas for the private capital to be interested in as well. Grid comes up a lot from everybody here. So what I'm going to do now, I have a couple of follow-up questions for the panelists, and then we're going to open for questions from the audience, and also for those online. I think there are a number of people online, and then we're going to monitor the questions. Okay, so if I can start, and I'm going to go in the same order as before. I'll start with Mechthild for, you know, we talked about the Clean Industrial Act, but now the next one is the Clean Energy Investment Strategy as well. That should be coming at some point this year. Is there anything you can tell us about what we could expect from it, and how that links as well to what we have now?
So, thank you very much. Indeed, I mean, today's discussion and forum this morning, but also this afternoon, we really very much wanted as input to our clean energy investment strategy. So it's planned for Q3, I think, now. So we will have something on nuclear, which we call PINK. I don't know why. It's something program multi-energy, nuclear, whatever. And we want to have something on clean energy investment strategy to accompany or complete the picture. So the discussion and the outcome, what we are right now doing and this afternoon, is already a very good input. And that will be some of our key document strategy, which we then follow up. Maybe just to mention, because grids was rightly so mentioned a number of times, both TSOs and DSOs involvement. We also plan a grids package, as we call it, either by the end of the year or beginning of next year, which is our first legal proposal. So the idea is really to change Trans-European Network for Energy, where there is a need to change. And I take the point also, which was mentioned on predictability, stability, and so on. So we plan only a change, a targeted change, to make it fit for purpose, certainly on the electricity side, which is the clear focus. How can we strengthen basically also the European approach? Because so far 10E with our 10-year network development plans is very much bottom-up, which is, I think, good. But for some occasion, like interconnection between countries and where we see a lack, I think the top-down has an added value. To take one example, which we were discussing a lot last year, Southeast Europe, where also you are quite active, and EIB as well. We saw price spikes in the early evening when the sun was down and not yet enough, so the price were speaking up. And anyhow, when I see the picture of electricity prices in Europe, Southeast Europe, and the neighboring country, the energy community country, are a difficult zone for really still high prices more often than in other parts. So there are reasons for it. I mean, one is certainly the lack of interconnections, and that we want to tackle, because sometimes it's not so much in the national interest, but in the regional or European interest. So how to match that will be one of the key questions for our grids package, how to reflect that and then get the agreement from the member states to do it. So we have the regional cooperation, Southeast Europe with SESEC and the energy community. We have Southwest, Southeast, and also the North Sea. So we have this regional cooperation, but I would like really also to focus in the area of where you mentioned, and I think the reasons are lack of interconnection or not the optimal use of the existing one, the flexibility question, the battery, the storage, demand response, all that. And I think we had some ACER study there. If we already would implement what we have in our electricity market design and using the existing grids much more in the interconnectors, the price would drop by 10 to 12%. So I think we can do more. But coming back to the investment strategy, as I said, the main input is coming from today and the follow-up discussions which we will having on the Affordable Energy Action Plan in the Energy Council on 17th of March, but also much further on it. Okay,
thank you. Now, and input from the group here, I'm sure you're going to get. That's what they all want to do. But before I pass to the next panelist, I would like just to finalize with you, Mechthild, on how can our energy companies and investors best prepare actually to leverage these initiatives? If you could give them a recommendation to prepare now. Do you have any?
To the companies?
Yeah,
to the member states, to the member
companies.
states, implementation.
Yeah.
And speaking of renewables, there are targets, sub-targets, for example, for industry, which could help the take-up of renewable hydrogen. I think the 42% there. That's what I hear from companies, for example. Predictability, implement what is in RED 3, in the electricity market design, in the energy efficiency, decarbonization of gas package. There might be areas for simplification. They are partly complex, but not deregulation. So really simplification for us, and that what we meant is more on the reporting side and so on. But the main message is implement what's in as soon as possible. And on the renewable side, which was mentioned a couple of times, these are the sub-targets, these are the measures, these are the permitting, which we put in RED 3. So I think this is what, and I think that what I hear from companies a lot, that the implementation for member states.
Great. Thank you very much.
And I mean, we can help them. I mean, it's not that we now sit there, we have technical advice, guidance documents, and so on. So I think the dialogue here, it's not to blame them, but really to help them make it happen.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And Laura, quick question for you as well. In terms of the EIB, we know from the operational program from 24 to 26 that you have increased investment mentions, lending activity for more higher risk operations. Obviously, we talk about de-risking as well now, and also is one thing the investors talk a lot about in our working groups as well. So please, could you tell us a bit more about how you plan to implement this, and then when it comes to investments in energy? Yeah.
Thank you, Daniela. And indeed, we have already in 2024 reached a record year in terms of our support through equity and quasi-equity as a group, so from the European Investment Fund and European Investment Bank, of 8 billion in these very high-risk activities. And we want to continue to build on that because, of course, we do see the need and we do have the support of our shareholders, which are the member states, to go into that direction. We use a broad range of financial instruments from equity, I mentioned quasi-equity or venture debt, loans and guarantees. Let me give you an example of an area where indeed we do see this playing a very important role, and it's the energy storage. Flexibility has been mentioned. I'm very happy to see that you also have a working group this afternoon, and this is an area where different solutions still need to be fully developed and brought to scale. And there, our instruments, together with the Commission, together, for example, with Breakthrough Energy, I think they're also present here this afternoon, we are supporting companies which are at the earlier stage to develop their technologies, but also to bring them up to full commercial scale. And for example, we have been working with Rondo, which aims to decarbonize the heat supply for industry, or Energy Dome, which is an Italian company which uses compressed CO2 for the energy storage. The Clean Industrial Deal sees a clear role for the EIB to help in the de-risking part. We spoke about this before, and the case of clean tech guarantees that we have deployed with very much success on the wind, with the wind package, that we are looking at deploying for grids, can also be an important instrument for smaller, innovative clean tech companies. When they want to scale up their manufacturing and they want to sell their innovative products, they're often faced with the needs to provide the guarantees for the longer term, and there they end up locking up precious capital which is needed for the manufacturing, for the development, into these guarantees. So by offering counter guarantees to the banks, we allow them to unblock the capital and put it where it matters, accelerating investments. Of course, Craig was saying, okay, good, you can do it for one company, please do it for 20, do it for 100. And that's where, indeed, the Clean Industrial Deal puts forward this idea of optimizing, revising the InvestEU, because one money that you put into with a public, as a public backstop for investments translates in 15 euros mobilized. So it's a very, very powerful way of leveraging and leveraging the private. So we are very much excited that there is this proposal put forward in the Clean Industrial Deal, and we are very much looking forward to see this and put into practice and be able to go big.
Exactly. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Laura. And Maria, I have a question for you as well, a follow-up question. Hi, Krzysztof. So you have a reaction on our panelists.
No. I just wanted to wave goodbye because this is when I need to leave.
Yes, I understand.
Maybe waiting for a second question, but if not, then thanks, and I'll see you around.
Okay, Krzysztof, thank you so much for your time and for being here. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So yeah, Maria, question for you then. So you mentioned a lot about measures, a lot of policy recommendations for the policy framework that would then enable the private investments. So from the EBRD side, so can you tell us a bit more about what instruments, what initiatives, actions you have been deploying to kind of crowding private investments as well?
Sure. So we have our renewable energy program, which supports the countries in creating these policy frameworks conducive to investments. They touch upon support schemes like CFDs. They also now, they look at also grid flexibility, and what are the needs there. We have a storage component as well, where we also help countries try and scale up the storage capacities in the system. So we recognize that has to come hand in hand with renewables. So we do have that broad, let's say, spectrum of instruments that we do, and then obviously we provide the needed investment then when the projects come to fruition or in parallel. Importantly, I think we invest a lot in interconnection with the EU, and this has been mentioned a lot, and I just wanted to make this point. For example, with Tunisia, where we've done something with the EIB on ELMED, for example, the ELMED project, critical project, a project where, for example, the BRD is providing now support for Tunisia to actually have some guarantees of origin type scheme, cannot call it guarantees of origin, it's not an EU country, but that scheme, in order to make this link with Italy much stronger, which we think is very important for the region. So that's a concrete example. More on the industrial side, what we've done in 2024 is we've created a country platform with Turkey, for example, driven by CBAM, but also driven by the fact the country wants to decarbonize. It's a $5 billion platform where we are committing to that investment to help them in the cement industry, the fertilizers industry, steel. So it brings everyone together, focuses them. It's anchored in our low carbon pathways, which is support we provide to the countries to help them have a roadmap to decarbonize. And here I'm talking about non-EU member states, obviously. So we think this is really important. We are working with energy community countries very actively. In fact, we work on all of them, pretty much, to bring them closer to the EU, to develop the markets so that they can then integrate with the EU. They can then trade. So we are doing, for example, a market readiness assessment in Albania to see if we can convert some of their current government-supported PPAs into CFD schemes, to bring it forward. We should have the first assessment done now in the summer. So, you know, we've created in these energy community countries mechanisms where, because in some cases they don't have the liquid markets yet, don't have an intraday market yet that is liquid. What we have done, which is quite innovative, is we've auctioned PPAs that convert to a CFD, not to lock in the country to a PPA for 20 years or 15 years. And so, and this conversion is dependent on this market readiness assessment. And this is why it's so important, because when we do these policy reforms, even for our investment, you know, to enable the investment, to enable the private sector, we need to be mindful not to lock in the countries to a long-term commitment that then, you know, could lead to changes in regulation, could lead to many things. So we are doing all this work behind the scenes. We're also supporting interconnections between Romania and Moldova, for example. Again, try and foster this regional cooperation point. But also, you know, with Ukraine, we continue supporting Ukraine a lot. One of the largest investors there still now, and we are very proud to support Ukraine and support their measures and their efforts in the energy sector. So we are really across all of the entire spectrum and in all of the sectors. And this, I really wanted to emphasize this very important point mentioned by Mechthild about bringing the region together and the broader region, not just EU, but EU plus the neighborhood, because I really think that will create synergies that can then drive prices down, that can then make for a cleaner future for everyone, because, you know, we need to look at the issue of climate change or as emissions as a global challenge, not just a local challenge. So this is the type of things we have been doing at EBRD to try and bring everything closer together. So we have the privilege of working in the multiple regions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to give time to have questions from the audience as well, but I have just a final question for Craig, because, you know, we have limited resources. Obviously, you know, you have the need to invest in innovation, but you also have the need to invest in large-scale projects like grids, for example, you know, the big, large deployment for more mature technology as well. So how can we, you know, what do you think, you know, how do you see that for the clean energy investment strategy to balance the need to invest in innovation with the deployment of more mature technology as well? Because I know this is more linked to the areas you are investing in as well.
Yeah, maybe just to set the context there, for us to meet our climate goals in 2030, we don't really need any new technologies today. Okay. It's all about scaling up existing tech. We need a few, but it's marginal. If we want to do this by 2050, we're missing about half of the technologies we need. Maybe slightly less, but around that sort of figure. But the point here is then, like, how do you balance this? You can get much better leverage doing large-scale projects and guarantee schemes than you can from doing direct equity or grant schemes for getting research off the ground. So, you know, which way can you go? If you want to leverage the most amount of public capital to get the most bang for your buck, then you should be doing it later stage. I do not have an incentive to say that. I am an early stage investor. But if you're talking about, you need to make sure that you're not, you know, prioritizing the next 5 years and shooting your foot for the following decade. So one of the things that Europe is really fundamentally good at is R&D. What we're really bad at is commercializing it, right? So in terms of the prioritization, scale up what we've got. A lot of the focus on the clean industrial deal is on that. And the other side of that is the technology that's coming out, make sure that has the opportunity to scale up as well. So continue to fund InvestEU, the research programs. And I particularly like the new EIB programs. And EIB's been, I have to say, very good in the last 2 years in the programs about getting companies able to scale. I would say I'm a direct recipient from, indirect and direct recipient of money from EIB and InvestEU, both for our fund and also for our portfolio companies. And that has been very helpful in terms of scaling that up. So it is going to be a balancing act. But the biggest gap we see in the whole financing ecosystem at the moment is that kind of Series B, Series C gap for those who run in venture scenes. So the kind of 50 million to 200 million for companies in terms of scaling up production capacity. Once you want more than that, the bigger players are involved and it's pretty much de-risked. But in that gap, that's probably the biggest bottleneck we have, because there's probably still some tech risk there, and there are no big players who are willing to take tech risk. We're one of the largest, and we're only 300 million, right? There needs to be more of that.
Yes, absolutely. This financing gap for the scale-up is dramatic everywhere in all sectors, not only clean energy, but also deep tech and life sciences as well. We're going to have a session in the afternoon about innovation, financing innovation, and we're going to cover that. I would like to open to questions. I have my colleagues, Sarah and Giovanni, with the mic in the room. And Giovanni, you will tell us, after we take 2 questions, you tell us if there are questions online as well, please. Okay? Thank you. So we have a question there at the back near you. Sarah? Yes. Thank you.
Yes, it's during the... Okay, awesome. This feels really weird. Hi, my name is Sanjeev Kumar. I'm the head of policy at the European Geothermal Energy Council. Good morning. Fascinating conversation. Maybe I can make one reflection. This has been about electricity, and it's a really thorough discussion around electricity. But electricity is only a quarter of the energy that we consume in Europe and globally. Heat is half. A lot of the energy crisis that we saw, especially during the summer, was because we have electricity systems overheating to deliver cooling services. So I think it'd be good to have a conversation around heating as well as electricity, so we can have a genuinely balanced conversation. But I want to speak to our finance experts, Craig, Marie, and
Laura?
Yes, of course, Laura. So we have an example of Poland. Chris Bolesta was on the call earlier. Poland has a national strategy for geothermal. They have loads of regulations. They have local authorities queuing up to invest in geothermal energy projects. There are private developers within Poland, but also outside Poland who are looking to crowd in and make the investments. However, it's very hard for them to have a discussion with the financial institutions. So I'm curious what Craig, Maria and Laura would like to offer in terms of what more would the Polish government need to do to allow you to crowd in with private sector finance for geothermal in a country like Poland? Thank you.
Just to immediately respond, there is someone from InvestNL over there who have done quite a lot of stuff on kind of the heating side of things and how to incentivize private capital into the local markets. So if you haven't already spoken to, I can't give you a huge amount of confidence there, but you should be speaking to him.
I will add to this point to say, and then you should reach out to the EBRD and EBIB, if I can speak, offices on the ground who will know the context, who can see the project, because these geothermal especially is really project specific. It's not, it depends. We don't know what the project is, so it's a bit hard to say in abstract. But if you engage with the local office and our colleagues on the ground, for sure you'll be able to get more answers and look at the merits of the specific project.
Indeed, and this allows me to speak about also the advisory offer that we both provide with the support of the European Commission, and indeed it helps prepare the projects, and these are very project specific, as Maria was saying, to both access the grants from the European Commission, but also be bankable and be ready indeed to leverage the private investment that is needed to scale them up.
And maybe just to add to your first point, heating and cooling is indeed a very important sector, and decarbonization of heating and cooling remains a challenge in many of our EU member states. And we have the plan to look at heating and cooling with another strategy, which is planned later this year or beginning next year. Some of those have not yet a fixed date, but we are very much aware that we need to do more. And it's about geothermal, heat pumps, energy efficiency in the sector, the use of other clean technologies and so on. But as sector heating and cooling, it's true, it's often not mentioned enough, but it's part of our strategy as well, and we will go deeper into it and what needs to be done more concretely during the year. So any suggestions, of course, very much welcome. And I see there is a working group here. So our investment strategy, which will come out in the third quarter, looks at obstacles and what can happen here as well.
Great, yes, and I'm sure we can have feedback from the group as well, heating and cooling from today. Yes, we have another question here. Please, thank you.
Shall I speak here? Do you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Vincent Touvenin from R2, from ENSO, the TSO. Thank you for mentioning a lot of time the grids. We know the challenges. R2 has just released its 15 years investment plans a few days ago, and it's around 1 billion euro for the French grids, transmission grids, not distribution grids, only for the transmission. So the challenges are here. I'm happy that we are all mobilized around that. I think just to mention that we are engaging, of course, with the Commission services, DG ENER. We're also starting to talk with the EIB teams, and we're happy about that. I think we have to keep in mind that we are in a regulated activity, in a kind of a monopoly or special rights activities, and this is really specific compared to other type of businesses that were mentioned, where projects finance may be more easy or easier to spread over a different type of infrastructure equipment projects, which might not be the case in regulated meshed grids when we look at that. So it's to do it, but do it right, and we are very happy to engage and discuss further where are our bottlenecks for financing all these investment needs. They will not disappear. So now we have to think about how to attract finance to keep the TSO financial attractiveness, investment grades for the debt capital markets. I'm happy to try to distinguish what can be done at the supply chain level. I guess the ideas or what was done in the wind generation plan is interesting to look at, but how to adapt it to the needs for the grids, that's a question. I don't have the answers. Then we have the questions of financing specific investment, interconnections were mentioned. Some type of interconnection, direct current might be isolated, more easier than other type of non-direct current technology. Sorry to go in this type of technological discussion, but and then also how to keep the financial attractiveness I already mentioned. So if we can distinguish these different type of problems, maybe we will be able to find the right solutions and contribute to the challenges. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Vincent, for your intervention. Do we have a question online, Giovanni? Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have several questions online.
Okay.
One question I think is for the whole panel could be on whether, so we mentioned we want more investments in clean tech and energy, but do we want also more foreign investments? First question. And second question, and maybe it's more specific for EIB and the Commission, is how are the guarantees for PPAs and the clean tech facility announced in the Clean Industrial Deal different from what we already have with InvestEU?
So where do we start? We want to cover both, Laura?
Maybe I start just welcoming the remarks from the French TSO, because indeed, of course, we have been talking about the grid guarantees for the manufacturing, but of course, we need significant volumes. We need the longer term of the tenors of loans that we can provide for the TSOs. We need to address different challenges for the DSO, which, for example, in countries like Germany are extremely fragmented. So we have different challenges for different type of investment needs, and we need to address all of these, not only one. So absolutely point very much taken on this. On the point on do we want more foreign investment, I think this is an excellent question and one on which we do need to reflect. And again, not one answer for one sector specifically. There are areas where we do need, I believe, to welcome investments in manufacturing in Europe, as long as this allows Europe to catch up, to build the supply chain around the production, and I'm thinking, for example, around the batteries. It helps Europe build the knowledge, the skills that are needed to scale up production in Europe. There are other cases where, in fact, we have lost a bit the train on solar. I'm not sure whether we still have a chance to address some specific technological areas in that, and there are other areas on wind where maybe a different approach is warranted. And there is the proposal around procurement, European procurement in a way, and I think we need to use, again, all the tools on the toolboxes. On the last point, how does this different? When I was speaking about how the EIB can support, I was speaking about ramping up the volumes, keeping up the volumes on the instruments we already have. And we can already do a lot. But with dialogue with the European Commission and with dialogue with the private sector, and I'm sure there will be more ideas coming up with the dialogue today, and very much looking forward to hearing the feedback from the rest of the day, you realize that there are areas which need a bit of a special instrument. And that's why we were looking at this debottlenecking of grids. We have done that for wind, it works. So we are trying to address the needs here on the grid manufacturing. On the PPAs, again, it works very well already for large scale. We are trying to address the small scale, the smaller consumer, which have which are seen as more riskier, so they don't manage to get the same opportunities as the larger scale. So these instruments differ because they are tailored and to meet specific needs. But it's also why the announcement is for a pilot, this announcement is for a smaller envelope, and it can be scaled up depending on the needs. Or we may want to see that in the discussion today, in the discussion we are having on the strategic investment plan for energy, there are other areas that need to be addressed. So I think it's important to be responsive to the market and listen to the market and adjust according to the market.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to comment?
Could I just comment on should we be accepting foreign capital? We can't afford not to. I think it's probably the first thing to say. The scale that we need and the relative risk averseness of the large scale capital in Europe just means that we can't do without it. If you're a early stage company and you're looking to get growth finance, Series B, Series C, Series D, you're getting 50%, well, between 40 and 60%, depending on the series, from money outside of Europe, period. So if you're not willing to accept that, you've got a really big hole to fill. Now, anybody have an idea of what the largest single investor is for scale-up capital outside of Europe? It's Canadian pension funds, right? Because they're far happier to take the risk. They've seen great returns and they're willing to push for that. Go and try and have that conversation with a German pension fund. Good luck, right? So in terms of what you can do, you really we need to accept it. And maybe one final point, there are industries, particularly in things like batteries, where most of the capital coming in is coming from foreign companies investing in manufacturing capacity in Europe, right? So thinking that capital has to come from Europe, I think in some industries, in some areas, we have to accept it coming from elsewhere.
Thank you, Craig. Yes, Mechthild.
Maybe to add on that, I think the risk availability differentiate between some of our countries, and I think we are well aware. But coming back to the question, I mean, we started the debate last year with the Net Zero Industrial Act, which is really has a benchmark that 40% in average of all the clean technologies which are part, and there are wind, solar, and many others, batteries, efficiency technologies, and so on. The benchmark is 40% should be manufactured in Europe. We know that solar, we lost the game 20 years ago. Wind looks better, and many others. So we are differentiating. There is also in the package yesterday a competitiveness report on clean energy technologies where we are, and we are implementing the Net Zero Industrial Act, for example, for auctions on renewables. We try to define resilience criteria. It's not easy because on one side we want more renewables, on the other side we want more to be manufactured in Europe, but we want to avoid a dependence on one single country. And if we have a lesson learned from the last 3 years, I think there is a clear example. So diversification is something, but also a focus where possible, either to regain or in scaling up new technologies or where we have a market share to keep it. And there are a couple of instruments around it. Thank you.
Thank you. We run out of time, but I think we can have one more question if there is a pressing question here. And then, online we will see later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Itske Lulov. I represent Invest International. It's basically the sister company of Invest NL. And I wanted to comment on the geothermal question in Poland. Basically, we focus on supporting and financing the rollout of amongst others, energy projects, either outside of the Netherlands, either in Europe and also in emerging markets and developing countries. So the example of geothermal in Poland, we could definitely support and have a look how we could support and making that happen in terms of financing. We're doing it currently, looking at a geothermal project in Turkey, how we can make it bankable and support it. So I think that's an offer maybe we could discuss over here. I had a question, maybe most to Mechthild, on how the clean industrial deal, how can we also leverage on it by exporting knowledge and production from European suppliers outside of the EU, and whether there are opportunities and maybe already talks with Klima and INTPA to see how we can use that. Also with the view that looking forward, a lot of demand will come from these countries, and there is, I think, also an opportunity. So I was wondering if you could comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we work with DG Klima and INTPA. We are coming up with an energy climate diplomacy, which part of it is really the dialogues, the MOUs we have with many third countries around the world. And I think if you look what's happening geopolitically right now, we will strengthen it with some countries, like the college is today in India, a big partner in terms of size, but also there is a dialogue on clean tech there happening today and tomorrow. So we will strengthen our dialogues with partners and third country together with, it's a Commission dialogue, and the focus is very much on clean energy, on clean tech, which we will strengthen. Maybe one last word, which nobody mentioned the MFF coming up, the Commission proposal before summer. I think if we can all agree that there should be something on cross-border infrastructure and clean energy, it will be a difficult debate all over, and the Competitiveness Fund was already announced. It's part of it. We don't yet know the shape, but our investment strategy and the focus on clean energy, if we can all agree on that, should be a big part of it. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And MFF comes up normally in our working group discussions, so I'm sure somebody might follow up with you, Mechthild, on that. Look, you made my job very difficult to summarize this discussion because it's very complex, it's very vast, there are many areas to look into, but if I could summarize a couple of key words, grid was definitely one, but we talked a lot about coordination, implementation, fast implementation, move fast, right? So that's a key point for a lot of sectors. Competitiveness as well. Decarbonization is pretty much in the agenda, so that's great. And then we talk about more certainty as well for investors, you know, and then we go into guarantees and so on. So I would like to thank you very, very much for sharing your very deep expertise in everything we're doing. I'm sure the investors here, everybody in our working groups appreciate. So thank you so much. And I think we're going to go to the next panel, in our technical session with my colleague Svetelina. Thank you.